What up, peeps? So, this has been a long time coming, and I am so glad I did it, but I felt confident enough in my central nervous system, my immune system's solidity, stability. Still feels fairly wrecked, I'm not gonna lie, but I also just was really missing the antidepressant qualities of a macrodose of psychedelics, so I did a macrodose of psychedelics, and initially I was going to do some 4-HO DPT because I've got like a half gram of it, but I then realized, oh wait, another really enjoyable RC chemical that has like little to no headspace that I absolutely love is 4-HOMET, 4-HOMET. I believe it's called Metocin. It's a psilocin analog, one of the Shulgin chemicals that he outlines in Decal. Ooh, it is pissing rain out there. Yeah, so I figured, it's been a while. I've only done 2CB over like the last month once, which also is another, as I say in my beginner psychedelic video, one that has very little headspace. Now, strangely enough, with 2CB being a phenethylamine and more stimulating, I find 4-HOMET tryptamine, and tryptamines are sort of inherently just sedating, like the compound that they're based on, or while most are based on or distantly related to the ones outlined in TCAL, like 4-HOMET, 4-HO DPT, stuff like that. They tend. DPT admittedly is quite stimulating for tryptamine. It's very euphoric, makes you horny, unlike anything else I've ever tried. Maybe meth makes you more horny, but in a more unpleasant and more fiendish manner. But I was like, yeah, I've had some really great times with 4-HOMET because it's despite being a tryptamine, and the thing I don't like about tryptamines, despite them being like one of my favorite classes of psychedelics, is that they really don't jive very well with the speed of my train of thought, if you will, the speed in which my thoughts like to go, which is, if you can't tell already, rapid fire. And they also, I learned this on Psychonaut Wiki, they have a tendency to make your thoughts, or not your thoughts, but your sort of cognitions cycle. Like there's a cycling that goes on where every hour, like approximately, they say every 60 minutes, your thoughts go from slow to fast, slow to fast, slow to fast. And I've, especially with mushrooms, which like make me really drowsy and sedated, I've not been such a fan of that part of it. It just makes me feel kind of uncomfortable, like whereas like a phenethylamine like 2CB or LSD or other sergamides like 1P-LSD, which is apparently metabolized into LSD by your body, but personally I find it kind of different and I find it longer lasting than LSD. Like those just jive with my thoughts very well, and it's because of that stimulating nature. It just happens to, I don't know, just work well with my ADD. But out of all those tryptamines, except for, I'd say DPT, and 4-HO-DPT, and I have no desire to do regular DPT again, because it's just, too much like fucking, it's like snorting massive amounts of flour that turns into putty in your nose. Whereas 4-HO-DPT, you take like a significantly smaller amount. Yeah, it still has that same kind of clogging effect in your nose, but with it being, like a strong dose being 25 milligrams intranasally versus, a strong dose of DPT being like 100 milligrams intranasally. And me just kind of finding them virtually identical, I really have no desire to do DPT, just regular DPT on its own, again, unless it's in like a freebase form, because I've heard of like this church that, kind of suspiciously doesn't have very much information on them. They're called like were called like the Temple of Inner Light or something, and they use DPT as their like primary sacrament or whatever. They called it the light, and they apparently smoked it, but I can find very little reports on people successfully smoking it, so don't know how much credence there is to that. But with DPT, I mean, I think I broke through, but I kind of blacked out from doing too much. I've gone very close to breakthroughs on it, and found it kind of was like a median between 5-MeO DMT and just NMDMT. So like basically it was like, I call it kind of like DMT for nihilists. It felt sort of cold and apathetic in terms of content. I mean, your body on the other hand is like, feels super warm, and like you've stuck your hand with a fork into an electric socket and it's going zzz, but not, without the pain. Another thing about DPT is it makes you kind of shaky. Some people get it worse than others. I don't get it that bad, but yeah, I find those kind of unpleasant side effects are less prominent with 4-HO-DPT, but that's just me. People have variable effects. But anyways, that's not what I did yesterday anyways. Because I was like, oh, wait, I've got 4-HOMIT, and I've had these really cool experiences on 4-HOMIT, because despite being a tryptamine, it doesn't, like, Psychonaut Wiki says it has that cycling effect on your thoughts, but I don't notice it anywhere near as much as with other psilocin analogs, or psilocin itself. Like when I take magic mushrooms, for example, I find it not overly stimulating, not super stimulating to the point of like DPT or DPT analog, but I do find it stimulating and almost like a cross between psilocin and which is 4-HO-DPT, or sorry, 4-HO-DMT, which is what's in mushrooms, and something like 2-CB. Like, you get really crazy fucking visuals on it, but they aren't overwhelming, and they don't feel like super realistic. They feel very cartoony in nature. And so, yeah, in any case, I decided, fuck it. I was planning to do the 4-HO-DPT first, because I had so much of it, compared to the amount of 4-HOMIT, both of which, I get from a laboratory. Yeah, in any case, I was like, okay, I'll flip a coin. Flipped a coin, left it up to chance, 4-HOMIT won. So I was like, you know what, 4-HOMIT, let's just chill, have a good time. I'll find some, bad horror movies, and we'll just chill out, eat some good food, do some ketamine. I would have done some MDMA with it because it's something I've never combined with MDMA, and it is a very euphoric drug, I find. So I decided to add some two K-hole doses to the trip, which I find it is alongside the DPT type stuff my favorite of the tryptamines to combine with ketamine. I think the only drug other than that which would top it is 2CB. Except I've combined it with 2CB so many times that it kind of, the novelty's worn off a little bit. Let me step onto the pissing rain here, but in any case, I prefer sniffing for vomit because I get it in a powdered form. Jeez, it's really coming down. I get it in a powdered form, and I had the lab results on the batch, the purity and all that, so I know, how much I'm taking. I know that's pure. And I did at least 15 milligrams divided up into two little lines of each nostril, and it was actually probably more than 15, because it's it's hard to get an accurate read on something like that when you're using a scale, no matter like how good your 4-point scale may be, and it has to be a 4-point scale. But I've also railed for vomit so many times that I'm like pretty good at eyeballing it. So I did it. It takes about 15 minutes to kick in. Once it does kick in, it kicks in and you peak pretty much immediately. And I was watching Duel, which for those of you who don't know, I believe it was directed by Spielberg. He at least had something to do with it. He was maybe like a producer or something, but it was written by Richard Matheson, who wrote one of my favorite books growing up, which was I Am Legend. Now, I'm sure most of you have seen the film adaptations, like the one with Will Smith. A regrettable adaptation, if you ask me. Omega Man, which is it's okay. I mean, it's a very Charlton Heston-esque movie, and it strays very far from the source material. There was an I Am Legend made in like the 50s or 60s with what's his face, that not Bela Lugosi, but that other very famous sort of Universal movie monster guy. I don't know, his name eludes me. Anyways, Richard Matheson wrote the script for it, and I remember that I watched it like ages ago, and it's a very simple plot. It's just this guy, and he's kind of an unassertive, like paranoid, anxious, constantly being emasculated type dude, and he is tormented by this truck that is like just constantly fucking trying to run him off the road and trying to kill him and hurting other people along the way. But I found it, I thought when I first saw it to be just kind of like that was cool and all, but there's some great scenes, great directing, but nothing special. But this time around, I think it was maybe the 4-HOMIT with the reduced headspace, kind of like 2CV. It doesn't force you into introspection, but you can have an introspective, analytic sort of perspective on things if you want to. And I found the movie so much more profound than otherwise. Like, I found the whole, like, him versus this truck, which, by the way, is very similar to the truck that the creature in Jeepers Creepers, the first one anyways. I haven't seen any of the other ones because the guy who made that movie is a disgusting pedophile. It's very similar to the truck that the monster uses. So that made me lose even more respect for the guy who would, I mean, the respect that I already didn't have because he was a fucking pedophile. The guy who made Jeepers Creepers. Made me lose even more respect because I was like, well, he just basically stole this idea. Now, the interesting thing about this movie is a couple of things. Like, it was very ahead of its time, I think, because you hear the guy, the main character, he's listening to the radio at the beginning, and it's talking about men who play the role of what a housewife would typically be doing at that time in the 70s. So not working, taking care of a child and all that. And it also touched upon something that I completely missed somehow the first time around, which was that the wife of the main character was pretty irked with him because apparently some guy tried to rape her the night before at a party, and he did nothing about it. So, like, it ends up being like kind of this dick-sizing match between him and the trucker. And there's actually, and few movies pull this off well. There's a scene where he's in a diner and he's kind of freaking out after his first encounter with the trucker, and he's looking around trying to figure out who in the diner is part of the trucker and whether the whole town is, or that community is in on it too. You're hearing his thoughts, his paranoid thoughts, as he's sweating and anxious. And he goes through these scenarios of how he's going to approach various people and try to figure out who owns this, like, massive big rig. He ends up just, like, very timidly trying to approach this one dude, and she's like, cut it out, just cut it out, man, cut it out. And the guy's like, the fuck you talking about? And basically, hurls him back over a table or a chair or something. And so he essentially he appears crazy to absolutely everyone, and you never see the actual trucker throughout the whole thing. But there are, like, so many parts where there's a lot of suspense, like, the driver's going by a school bus that for whatever reason is broken down, and the school bus, it needs a push, and so he's trying to push it with his tiny little car, and he just can't do it. And like, it's just these jump cuts back and forth between him trying to fucking push this truck, and he gets his bumper stuck under the school bus, and the kids are fucking, like, making faces at him and, like, just kind of mocking him. And it's very anxiety inducing. Like, you feel the character's anxiety. Then the truck comes around and you're like, oh no, they're gonna kill all the children. I won't spoil what happens there, but the result is kind of unexpected. Once again, the character makes himself look crazy. The rest of the movie, it follows kind of similar things to that, with the truck, who is now obviously, like, super motivated to just fucking kill this guy. It's, they duel it out. And it's actually a really great movie. I'm sure there are many streaming platforms that have it. I just found it on YouTube because there's multiple versions. It was very enjoyable, and I saw it as kind of like an allegory for this guy sort of like reclaiming its masculinity by dueling it out with this fucking massive truck that has very malevolent intentions. And from there, I watched this giallo horror film, City of the Living Dead, which is terrible. It is so terrible. And it is, like, obviously trying to capitalize on Dawn of the Dead. For any of you Romero fans out there, the reason why he didn't name it Dawn of the Living Dead or, Day of the Living Dead, so on and so forth, is because he lost the rights to that name. He could only say of the dead as opposed to of the living dead. Which is, that's a complicated story in itself, but City of the Living Dead is a very misleading title because you don't really see a lot of zombies in it, and it's more of a paranormal film, and it's very funny because, like a lot of giallo horror films, it is really trying to convince you that it's taking place in the States, it's just got so much absurdity. Like, one of the main characters constantly got this cigar just hanging from his mouth in every scene, no matter, like, if he's surrounded by dead bodies that are, like, covered in maggots and stuff, he's still got this cigar sticking out of his mouth. And, it's full of that giallo horror sexism, like, they're trying to find this City of the Dead, this town, Dunwich, which I thought was Dunwich at first, which would have been an H.P. Lovecraft ode, the Dunwich Horror, which is a very great story by H.P. Lovecraft. But unfortunately, no, it wasn't. It was Dunwich. Because if it was Dunwich, that would have been a very early ode to homage to H.P. Lovecraft, because H.P. Lovecraft he wasn't really popularized until I think Stephen King kind of asserted his influence over his writing on it, and then started setting all the stories in Maine and stuff like that. But in any case, I watched that. It was hilarious. Their attempts to pull off American stereotypes were so bad. But it's got, the giallo horror fucking violence in it. A guy gets drilled through the head, and, like, the few times zombies appear, they, like, grab people by the back of their heads, and they squeeze their fucking scalps and pull their brains out, and it's just, it's so bad, but it's, like, hilarious. Like, I love bad movies like that because I'm not just switching off my brain. Like, I'm thinking the entire time just for the purpose of mocking them. In a weird way. Just kind of intellectually stimulating. So I had a blast watching that. And then I was deciding because I'm trying to get in the Halloween spirit and watch as many, like, ridiculous Halloween movies as I can. So I, being a big fan of Tobe Hooper, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, absolutely love Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, very psychedelic. I could tell Rob Zombie basically ripped off most of his ideas for House of a Thousand Corpses from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But needless to say, those weren't the movies I was seeking out. I was seeking out either Life Force or Return of the Living Dead. Life Force is directed by Tobe Hooper and it has a connection to Return of the Living Dead because Dan O'Bannon, who directed and wrote the first Return of the Living Dead, he, I believe, did the script for Life Force, it's a ridiculous movie, but in, like, the best way possible. Like, it's sure, it's hokey as fuck, but like it's not laughably so. Like, it's actually got some pretty cool scenes, some really cool prosthetics. It's a ridiculous premise. I mean, it's like these astronauts, they find these like fucking space vampires, either in like a comet or like a spacecraft on this comet, and they're like cryogenically frozen. And of course, one of them is this like very bodacious woman who is just naked throughout the whole thing, and she's infecting people who are turning into zombies, and England becomes this sort of battleground, or London specifically. But I decided to flip a coin because I wasn't sure which one I wanted to watch, and ended on Return of the Living Dead, and I was like, you know what? I've seen this movie so many times. And I've seen the second one. I've seen, I believe it's the fifth one, Necropolis. I regrettably saw the Rave to the Grave one, which I think was like the sixth one or something. Necropolis, Rave to the Grave were both just god-awful and just clearly trying to capitalize on the name of the first one, because the first one is one of the greatest zombie movies ever made. But I never saw the third one, and I remember like encountering the cover of the third one as a kid, and being like kind of scared by the woman on the cover, who looks like a member of Pinhead's Gash from Hellraiser. She's got all these like, you know, like hooks and barbs protruding from her face. She's got like spikes protruding from her fingers and stuff, and as kind of predictable as some parts of the movie was, I actually had a fucking blast watching it, and I couldn't recommend it enough. I mean, if you haven't seen the first one, watch the first one first. The second one, I mean, it has relevance to the third one, but it's like really pales in comparison to the first one and the third one. Third one's not a great movie, but like, I admire the hell out of the prosthetics, the effects that they used on the zombies in it. Like, they're legitimately creepy, and there are some kind of like borderline racial or racist stereotypes, stuff like that in the movie. But horror movies are full of ridiculous caricatures, and there are more of the caricatures than just the racial ones in that. And there's a black character, and he's like the one guy who is good in the movie, he isn't the first to die. I don't know where that horror trope came from. I have seen a lot of horror movies, and I've seen a lot of very facetious horror movies that Cabin in the Woods, where it's like, oh, I know how this goes, the black guy's the first one to die. I've seen that movie. Like, I don't know. Tell me which movies those are, because I just can't think of any offhand. Mind you, out of horror films, like slasher films are really my least favorite, so they're the ones I seek out the least, and it may be that it's slasher films that kill the black characters first. The only slasher film I really like is Psycho, as well as Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. The first one, anyways. I've kind of made deliberate decision to pass on all the rest, but even though there's so much stupidity on behalf of the main characters in Return of the Living Dead 3, it is so much fun. And I gotta say, the woman in it, who is on the cover, she's actually I mean, as fucked up as this may sound, when she starts like mutilating herself and shit, and like sticking these like hooks through her and these like spikes through her hands and shit, and she's got these chains hanging from her like exposed breasts, like it's kind of hot. I'm not gonna lie. And call me fucking twisted, but I thought she was kind of sexy, but I mean, I think she was made to look sexy. I mean, she was already sexy before, you know, like she gets reanimated. And for those of you who haven't seen Return of the Living Dead, interesting thing about it is it's very different than the Romero zombie films. It was like the first of the zombie movies to have running zombies, like a legitimate zombie movie. I'm not talking about like something that has zombie-esque creatures, i.e., you know, something that's been brought back from the dead and that can run. No, I'm talking about like flesh-eating, sort of like instinctually driven zombies, like, you know, like that check most of the Romero boxes, but that run instead of walk. And like, I've been a big fan of Max Brooks, you know, who did World War Z. I know he did a cameo in the movie, but the movie is shit. And like Max Brooks himself said, the movie has nothing in common with the book except for the title. I mean, the book is amazing. I read it in a span of like 4 hours on a drive back from Seattle, and it's definitely one of, if not the greatest, zombie story I've heard. It's very, very detailed. Basically, this journalist going around like post the World War Z and like interviewing people who witnessed like very pivotal moments, seminal moments, whatever, in the sequences that led up to the infection, you know, from the speculation of patient zero to the end of the war. And I'm not spoiling anything here because, you know, it says at the beginning that the war is over and that he's going around and he's interviewing people. It's very different than the fucking god-awful production hell-ridden abomination that is the movie. And Max Brooks hated the concept of running zombies. He hated it. But you know, there's all this crazy stuff in the book. Like my favorite part is the Battle of Yonkers, where in New York, they the city becomes infected after the government does what the government, you know, would probably do in a situation like that, which is to say, oh, we've got a vaccine that will protect you against the infection, when it really doesn't. Like, and it's called phalanx, like the strategic war technique that Alexander the Great used, you know, which is a very simple fucking technique. It's just, you know, you have a group of people running at you. Okay, let's form into a triangle and penetrate that group. It's, you know, a war strategy that's been hailed over the years as like super effective in boots on the ground combat. But, you know, it's a technique that if Alexander the Great, who, you know, I think is kind of over revered by society as, yes, he was a great fighter and all that. He was a good strategist for his time. But, you know, he is also, you know, a colonizer. He was just going over to the Middle East and being like, yeah, I'll take this, I'll take that. Yeah, so, you know, I was fighting off Persian hordes as a result. Yeah, in any case, they call the vaccine phalanx in World War Z. And it doesn't work. So, Yonkers, and, you know, which is, I believe, a part of Brooklyn or something like that. And, it just becomes overrun with zombies, and so the military sets up a checkpoint, and they're like wholly unprepared for the amount of zombies that they're going to encounter, which is in the millions. So they quickly get overrun, and they start using military weapons on the zombies, which have this crazy effect of, like, they drop these bombs from helicopters, which go just kind of straight down from the helicopter, and they essentially, like, mushify your internal organs. And so all it does, though, is it causes the zombies to have their lungs ripped out through their mouths. So the zombies are walking around with their lungs dangling out of their mouths. It's just crazy. It's crazy. It's such a great book. I couldn't recommend it enough. I used to have a copy, but unfortunately gave it away to someone who probably just never read it and lost it. But I mean, it's a very quick read. I never read the Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks. I mean, I've thumbed through it because a friend had a copy, but I didn't find it anywhere near as good as World War Z. But I think it did set the stage. And for those of you who don't know, Max Brooks is the son of the infamous Mel Brooks, the great mind behind, you know, The Producers, Young Frankenstein, and along with Richard Pryor, he did Blazing Saddles, you know, stuff like that. Just, Robin Hood, Men in Tights, which a lot of people weren't so fond of. I personally loved it. Just the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree when it comes to Max Brooks and Mel Brooks, his father. You know, there's definitely a lot less humor in World War Z, but the brilliance is on par with his father's. But in any case, yeah, there's just also really cool parts of the book. Like, there's a part of the book where, like, once most of the zombies have been killed, there's sort of like these community watch groups which go out, and one of the chapters follows a guy in a wheelchair with an Uzi who's, like, just going around, and he's just cleaning up his neighborhood. And there's, like, one where a fighter pilot has to bail out of his plane, like, outside of a major city, and, like, he has to survive with nothing but a service pistol. There's these also just crazy concepts like the the anti-zombie wiener dog or whatever. I'll say no more because I want you guys to experience this book for yourself if you haven't experienced it already. But anyways, those are the movies I watched, and then by that point I had already come down. I as I said, did 2 massive doses of ketamine with the 4-HOMT and had some crazy visuals, like massive holographic geometric patterns coming out of my walls, and, like, everything around me sort of spinning and warping, and I closed my eyes, like it was almost like intense, like for ACO DMT visuals, where, like, I saw kind of this, like, cosmic orgy of psychedelia, and there looked like a woman at the top who was kind of spitting out this green stuff over this cosmic orgy. And I've had a very similar vision for a ACO DMT when I closed my eyes, which was and I've seen a very similar thing on DMT too, which was NN-DMT, which was like a humanoid figure that looked like it was in a lab coat, sort of, with this dropper going, like I'll show you, because I've got a bunch of Phoenix tears here, and a similar bottle is going like, I'm just emptying the dropper so I don't waste any of my Phoenix tears. He's going like over the cosmic orgy, just like feeding them. Whatever. But yeah, no, just super cool visuals. I remember I went outside and I saw the Starlink satellite twice. I know its trajectory now because I've seen it so many times. I almost wanted to just go like, fuck you, Elon, like, you know, Mr. Genius, fucking, who decides to strap, 3 satellites together, and put them in the atmosphere. Oh, that's a good idea. Let's have these satellites super close to each other. So if one of them gets hit by space debris, then all of them will fucking, like, cause this chain reaction of boom, 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 boom. And, you know, more debris in the atmosphere, or sorry, not the atmosphere, the you know, beyond the Van Allen belt, or, you know, whatever orbit, you know, the Starlink satellite's taking. But, you know, admittedly, the Starlink satellite looks very cool from my vantage. It looks like, you don't see all 3 of them. What it looks like is one giant star that's pulling like a balloon made of light behind it, and it kind of bobs around, which is very weird. I don't see that in the trajectory of other satellites, but it seems like it's going like boop, 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 boop. That's probably just an optical illusion from the atmosphere, and also, you know, the fact that I was tripping last night, but I have seen it while I wasn't tripping, and it looked about the same. Looks, yeah, just like this giant bright dot and this giant balloon that looks like it's reflecting light that's being pulled behind it. And so, yeah, that was really cool. You know, like actually being able to see the stars, and just kind of chilling and watching them for a while. But yeah, I mean, I had no trouble sleeping at all. Like, at the end of the night, I did what I always do with psychedelics, which is, as I was looking up at the sky having a smoke, I saw this sort of geometric figure come down towards me, and I reached out my hand and I was like, "Thank you for homie," and I act like I'm like shaking its hand or whatever, even though I don't see a hand, I just see kind of like a form, and I go like that. And doing that will make it kind of start spinning around and sort of start opening up like a vortex, and like how vivid and detailed the vortex is based on how intensely I'm tripping. And I wasn't tripping that intensely by that point, but I was just like, you know, for homie, we had a great time. And I look forward to tripping again with you very, very soon. Now, I would love, and the whole time I'm, you know, thinking this, I'm going like that, you know, and that's one of those motions. I've talked about this, that, you know, there are various motions you can do with your hand, at least for me anyways, where I like going like that, for example, to visuals. It'll make them kind of grow. Like, this is another reason that I don't do super high doses of super high macro doses of long-lasting psychedelics, because I find just by like certain mental or physical techniques, such as hand motions, I can make the visuals more intense if I want to. But yeah, so I was like, you know, thank you, this was a great trip. Please, I had a shitty fucking sleep last night. I'm so fucking tired. Please let the remaining visuals just distract my mind and carry me into a glorious sleep. And I had one of the best sleeps I've had in a long, long time. And I woke up and like you can see in my face, I've got color back in my face. Like, this is fucking proof for anyone who is doubtful of the antidepressant properties that psychedelics have, for me anyways. I mean, I'm pretty sure they have antidepressant properties for most people, like even in microdoses, like that's why the FDA has been fighting so hard to get psilocybin legalized, because there's so much, like, just microdoses are so much more effective than SSRIs in treating depression. But yeah, no, I feel life back in me. I feel uplifted. I still see a lot of the world through the lens of pessimism. I was taking away sort of interpretations from Return to the Living Dead Part 3 that were, allegorically related to the pessimistic notions that I've been talking about, which, there's any movie that's not meant to be deep and, intended for analysis is Return of the Living Dead Part 3. So, this is a testament to how there is, in my mind, ostensible truth to these ideas, these tenets of pessimism that I've outlined in my last few videos on them. And I've got a lot more to say for anyone who cares, but that's another video. I'm just trying to stress that these ideas still stick to me, but I am far less just depressed, agitated, sapped of energy, etc., etc. Like my confidence, my self-esteem, my pain, because stress and nerve pain just it's just like food for nerve pain, and anxiety, like way down, anxiety way down. So yeah, I think I will be doing more psychedelics, but I mean, I won't be, other than maybe DMT, I won't be doing like super intense psychedelics, like LSD, which isn't super intense for me per se. It's just very long lasting. Or psilocybin mushrooms, which for many people isn't that intense, but for me, as I kind of told you at the beginning of the video, I don't like that heavily sedating effect, and that it's more obvious with mushrooms than any of the other tryptamine analogs I find, that hourly cycling of the speed of thoughts, so on and so forth. So I won't be doing stuff like that. I will be gradually getting myself back to that level where I am confident to do stuff like that. So I will probably be doing, I think, next the 4-HO-DPT, which, despite it can get intense. It can, like especially the body high, it feels kind of like changa in terms of the visuals. I find a little bit stranger and less spiritual than changa visuals, and the body high is just like something else entirely. As I said, it's like super euphoric. You feel like electrified, not in a painful way, but like in a almost like you're taking a fuckload of MDMA or something. But headspace is like virtually non-existent. But I almost next just want to do 4-HOMID again, but with MDMA, because I've never combined the two, and I really want to, and I've really scoured the web to try and find reports of other people doing it, to find out if it's worth it, which I think it would be, because it is fairly euphoric in terms of the body high. But I don't know if I would mix MDMA with 4-HO-DPT, because DPT, as I said, is already so stimulating and so intense in terms of a body high. A lot of people describe it as feeling like they've done MDMA in addition to a psychedelic. But yeah, what I'm getting at is that I'll be doing psychedelics that have limited headspace, like, that you can be introspective on if you want to, but it's not forced upon you. Like LSD or psilocybin mushrooms, where it's like, this is your life, take a good fucking look, fucker. LSD for me, because I think it's just more, what's the word I'm looking for? It resonates more with just the way my thoughts flow. I find that, yes, it makes my brain feel kind of soupy, for lack of a better term, but I find that, like, it also, like, makes me feel at higher doses, like, 200 micrograms, which is, kind of, I try not to go any higher than that these days. I used to be crazy and do like 600 fucking at least if I was gonna do it, but those days were a long time ago and before I had existential dread. So, not that I'm scared of dying. I'm more so scared of dying painfully. That's my version of existential dread, anyways. But like LSD, I find in doses that aren't fucking stupidly high and, are sure to give you like a long bout of ego death and potential thought loops, which, I haven't experienced thought loops in a long time, because I know that, like, all you have to do to make them stop is to stop fighting the ego death. You just surrender to it. Because thought loops where, you're repeating one word after another, and kind of nonsensically, I think is the ego trying to just desperately cling to the fact that you feel like you're dying. Because ego death is just this sense of dying, because it's your ego, which is, moderating your psyche, your behavior, trying to, juggle all these things in your life. It's going bye-bye. And that separation from ego and self, and I'm using quotation marks when I say self, because I don't necessarily believe there is actually a self. I believe the concept of self is essentially just an evolutionary mechanism that we've devised so we can pretend that we're like human beings or individuals with personalities, when really we're like just a result of programming, experience, programming, be it genetic, cognitive, developmental, so on and so forth. Self, if there is one, well, maybe your surface self is making decisions, but what about the self beneath that? Is that making decisions for the other self? And that means there must be another self beneath it. That's the paradox of self I was getting at in my other video. But anyways, I'll stop the pessimism there because, again, another video. Yeah, I mean, in any case, I will be doing more psychedelics, but I will be doing stuff that is, to me anyways, more palatable and just, you never know which direction a psychedelic is going, so that's why I try not to have any, like, solid expectations, because I think that's just sort of jinxing what will happen. But I find, stuff with minimal headspace, like, I felt like I was thinking with more clarity than I did when I was sober, or, pretty much as close as I get to sober, stoned, but with much more clarity than I normally do when I did the 4-HOMET, or than I normally have when I did the 4-HOMET. So be doing stuff like 4-HOMET ALLAD, which is an LSD analog, but it lasts like half the amount of time, and it's way less hard on your body, and the visuals are, I think, personally, are crazier if you do enough. Like, I find with that particular drug, I want to do at least like 250 micrograms. But the visuals, similar to 4-HOMIT, they feel less real than LSD, whereas with LSD, it's like, to me anyways, the visuals feel like it's like a real projection of your mental faculties, like and LSD, like it always forces me to kind of remove myself from the thought patterns I exhibit and employ on a daily basis, but don't really think of when it comes to, making decisions, if it's truly me making the decisions. And, in a way, that's a good thing, because it teaches me a lot about the nature of how, trying to determine outcomes for the future is akin to like math equations that we do in our head. Okay, this action plus this action, plus talking to this person, taking this bus, will result in this potential outcome versus, X, Y, Z and the other. But with ALLAD, I don't really get that. I found I have when I've wanted to, but it's not really forced upon me. And I find like you get kind of brighter colors and stuff like that on ALLAD. And it's also legal in my country, and I also have a ton of it, so yeah, I mean, why not? But I remember Adam from Psych Substance, who I have very, kind of mixed feelings towards. I won't get into it too much, but he said it was the ugliest psychedelic he's ever done. I have no idea why he had such like hideous visuals when he did it, because I have had nothing but like fucking stunningly beautiful visuals. I remember watching Mashima, A Life in 4 Chapters, which is a very trippy movie in itself, on it, and like just like being compelled to take photographs of some of the scenes, and to take photographs of the scenes reflecting in paintings or frames on that held the paintings or pictures, and through sort of fogged glass and stuff like that, like and because of the lack of body load and headspace, that weight you feel on your brain with certain psychedelics, I was like writing and stuff like that, whereas like most of the time on like pretty heavy duty psychedelics, for me anyways, like doses of mushrooms that are like, say, like over like 1.5 grams of like penis envy or whatever, which may not sound like much to you, but for some reason or another, like that's like a lot to me. Like if it's like over 1.5 grams, especially if I combine it with MDMA, like I'll try to play the guitar, I'll try to write, and it just feels weird. It just sounds weird, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. Fucking, especially with mushrooms, I'm just like so lethargic. All I want to do is plunk down on the couch and just go. But yeah, no, anyways, 4-HOMIT, that was a fucking blast. But I also thought of a really cool story that I am going to tell you in the next video that is related to psychedelics, and kind of blows my mind that I even did this back in the day, but I will say no more. Anyways, tell me if you can see in me the dramatic shift in, how depressed I was in the last few videos compared to how I am doing today, and whether I look healthier than I did in the last few videos, because I felt I was like looking really pale over the last while, which, lack of sleep, major amounts of pain, depression, just feelings of being completely alienated from everything, everyone, not wanting to leave the house, so on and so forth. Those would all contribute to such things. But yeah, no, I feel a lot better today, and I want to know if you think this is just a self-fulfilling prophecy of me convincing myself that I'll feel better, or if it actually shows through my demeanor. Let me know. Bye-bye. Love you. Mwah.